Hi, this is Sarah, the Stitchin Mommy, and I'm here just to work on my mini bird song. But I thought first I would take a moment to explain how I like to keep most of my full coverage patterns. I have at least 20 full coverage patterns on the go, which is a little bit insane, I realize. And I like to keep them in binders or report covers, that sort of thing. I don't usually go any bigger than like a 1 inch. This is like an old cast off binder, probably from college. It's a 1 inch binder. I have some that have the see-through front and back, and then I can put the cover pages in there, and I sometimes have 1 or 2 on each side, because a 1 inch binder will usually carry 2 or 3 different patterns depending on the size of the pattern. This binder has 3 in it, and what I like to do, I've got mini birdsong first, and I have a post-it note to show where, a big post-it note to show where the next pattern starts, and this is the flower garden. And I have another big post-it note back here for April Fairy. And then within each design, I also have these little like ripped up pieces of post-it note, and those show me the beginning of each row. So this is the beginning, page 1 of the first row, and then second row, third row, and fourth row. This one has 4 rows in it. So that's, if I'm doing cross country or I want to park something on the next line, I can go, oh, this is down on page 4, so I'll just tab over to my second row and it'll be right there. And like I said, I have some of these patterns in, a lot of them are in 1-inch binders. I have 1 1/2-inch binder, and I have a variety of report covers for either 1 or 2 patterns each as well, so on some of the small ones. That's how I like to keep my full coverage patterns. I have everything printed out that I've purchased. I have a bunch of freebie patterns that I've downloaded over the years from Artisy or Art of Stitching or Heaven and Earth Designs, even Golden Kite. There's a bunch of them that they've occasionally come out with free patterns, and I've collected them. But unless I'm planning to stitch one of those, I haven't printed those out. They're still just on my computer. But all the ones I've paid money for are printed out and in a binder. And there's a couple that I haven't started yet, but most of them I've started at this point. But it's nice to have them out so you can see them and not forget about them, so you can work on them. So I will be working on Mini Birdsong. This is charted by Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork by Tatiana Fedorova, and I blew this up a little bit so you could see it, so I could see it better, but that's what it will look like. This is 3 pages wide, a little less than 3 pages wide, so it's a nice small one, but it still has a decent amount of detail, as you can see in my little Morning Glory, which is this flower up here. Lots of light blue. Most of this is one color, so it's been going pretty quickly. And I am doing this 1/1 half stitch on 40 count Vertil even weave, which is a fairly new fabric. I don't think 40 count even weave was available until fairly recently, the last year or two. But I found mine on Traditional Stitches, which is a Canadian online shop, and they may actually have a real shop in a brick and mortar as well, because somebody on Instagram said that was their LNS. Like, oh, that'd be so amazing. I would love that. I found some really nice lakeside linen fabric at Traditional Stitches also. So I would recommend them if you like fine fabrics. I think they have lots of things, but you can find lots of the finer counts there that you can't find other places. This is a very, very soft fabric. I was not able to use a needle minder on this because I'm stitching in hand, as you know, and a needle minder, even my light one, kind of just weighed it down too much because this is such a light, fine fabric. So if you like soft fabrics, this one is definitely for you. It's very fine. I'm doing this 1/1 half stitch. My back looks like that right now. Lots of carrying into this next little leaf area and all my itty bitty little back. I prefer to do a regular half stitch when I am stitching full coverage because when I tried Continental, it made the warping horrendous, really, really bad. So either I wasn't doing it right, or people who like to do Continental have it in a secure frame, which I do not. So because I'm stitching in hand, this works well for me. If I notice it getting slightly wonky, I'll just kind of tug at it a little bit and it's fine. And I have had a full coverage piece finished in half stitch, and it did turn out slightly askew, but I was able to, when I washed it, I was able to block it with pins on my sewing cutting board and let it dry in a square, and I was able to frame it just fine in the with straight edges and everything. And so anyways, I think it works fine. There's something on here. Maybe not. Anyways, I will get started. I may have to put two cuts together because I was yapping so much about other things. But I'm going to get started. I'm going to finish up this column and hopefully start over here just so you can see how I stitch half stitch. And I do the same method I do on a regular piece. I like to just stitch half stitch on 28 count, and I do have some 25 counts as well. And even a 24 count Congress cloth. I've got all three of those that I like to do a half stitch also, but those I do with 2 strands. So this is just 1 strand because 40 is itty bitty, and this sad little needle is bent and I keep straightening it and reusing it just because I'm a cheapskate, but one of these days I'll consider getting myself a new needle. I think it might be smaller than a 28 so that I can run it underneath the threads in the back, but I'm not sure. It might be a 28. I'm not really sure. So when I go to finally get myself a new needle, I'll have to figure out what size this is. And I might need to go buy another one because if a 28 is too big for this, then I need to get something new. So I have parking going on here, as you can see. There's 2 threads parked in this part of my column, and there's just one stitch of this color and like 3 or 4, 5 stitches of this color, and then the rest is this blue. So I'm going to do the 2 parked stitches first, parked colors, and then I'm going to cut a length of the blue and start going on that, just because it'll be nice to get these out of the way. So with half stitch, it's basically just the first leg of your cross stitch. Done. That stitch is complete. So it's really fast, really quick and easy. And I'm going to go over here and look for the next spot where this occurs in the next column, which is right next door here. Move these guys out of the way so you can kind of see what you're doing. The one thing with 40 count, obviously, is making sure you can see it. And so far, I've been able to do pretty well. I have poor vision as far as I need contacts, but I'm still able to see fairly well, as long as I'm wearing my contacts. So I don't need a magnifier yet. So I figured now is the time to work on the finer count fabrics while I still can, because it's really a pretty, I need to mark this. It's a really pretty look, so I'm really excited to see this finished and hang it up somewhere. I'm marking where I parked my thread. Now I'm going to mark the stitch I finished, and then there's like 5 of this color down here too. This color is kind of a tricky little color because it's really close to the fabric color. It's like light cream or something. So if I'm not careful when I'm counting my blue, I could stitch right on over it because this is so tiny it's hard to really see that anything is stitched there. And it's hard to count with the camera in the middle too, but I think we'll do okay. And you'll be able to see, let's go down here. You'll be able to see the blue show up a lot better if you're not able to see what I'm doing right now, if this is too similar to the fabric color. But I want to get these done and out of the way. This is the same count and style of stitching that I used on my leaves that I did a little stitch along with on the silk gauze, the falling leaves pattern. I think that's right. And so it's a similar concept. However, on this one, since there's big blocks of solid color, it's really easy to show you like how I do my cross stitches or do my half stitches. So I thought it'd be fun to, you know, come on over and demonstrate that. Let me make sure I can count this one. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I think that's where that one goes. I was a little nervous when I first started working on this to see if all these, you know, all the thicker bits of multicolored, if that would be too hard to do on 40 count because there's so many different colors so close together. If I would get lost, if I would miss stitches because I couldn't see them. But it actually turned out really well, and that flower was actually a lot of fun to stitch, so it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. So that was good. Obviously, if you have trouble seeing fine counts, this would not be for you. Or just make sure you're stitching, you know, with good lighting. There we go. So I have my new thread here. One time I was working on this and my thread, this is DMC, my thread just broke right in the middle, not near my needle. It was closer to the fabric, and I was like really surprised because usually if it's going to fray where it's been rubbing against your needle. So that was a little bit strange, but that's only happened once, so I don't know that if it was the vertical or just that particular length that I had was weak for some reason. So I'm not sure what was going on there. Running the stitches underneath the back of this is what bends my needle, so if you've got a brand of needles that's really strong, go for it. Or you could do a waist knot method. I've never done that before, but that would probably work really well with something this tiny where you may not want to run your needle under your stitches because it's just hard. But so far I'm just doing it this way just because that's how I like to do it. So there we go. Don't want it to come out because then I'll have to try to run it under again. So here we go. I'm starting in the bottom left corner of my X and going down in the top right for this whole row. And as I go down, like in a normal cross stitch, I'd go down one row doing this leg, and then I'd go back that same row doing the opposite leg, so to make your full cross. the beauty of half stitches is you can go down one row with your half stitch, and when you come back you're actually completing a second row, because you can come back on the row below you doing a half stitch also, and then you end up with 2 rows of stitches instead of just one. It's as if you had been doing a cross stitch. I like doing half stitch on some patterns. Like I have some of my full coverage pieces are full cross, some are half stitch, and I think because I have so many, the half stitch works for me, because then it'll help them go a little bit faster and maybe see a little bit more progress in my lifetime. I'm going to go ahead and go into this next column, because there's a bunch of, it goes kind of a little bit here, whereas it's this big sky. I want to make sure I keep tracking with my numbers and not get off. But I think I might do, I don't know, maybe I don't know if I want to do all of that. We'll see. So there's at least 2 here. And then when I'm coming back down the next row, I start in the top right and go down in the bottom left. So it's the exact same direction of half stitch. You want to try to keep all your slashes in the same direction to make sure it stays uniform. And by coming up in the top and down in the bottom for this other leg, it's I think it helps with the tension and keeping it from warping. Something I thought it would be fun to talk about was Amazon wish lists. Because my in-laws in particular, and my husband's family likes to work off of wish lists for birthdays and Christmas and things like that. My family does a little bit as well, but a lot for his family. And we've found that an Amazon wish list is really nice, because you can not only put Amazon stuff on there, but you can also add things from other websites, as well as just add, a written description of something that you would like. So, for example, this Vertical even weave from Traditional Stitches, I received as, I believe, a birthday present. Maybe 2 years ago, not this past September, but the one before that, from my mother-in-law, because I could link it to my Amazon wish list that I would like it. And I have things on there from 123 Stitch and Etsy, and my mother-in-law got me a golden kite pattern one time. She bought the PDF and gave it to me on a thumb drive with a picture printed out so I'd know which one it was. So just a food for thought, like if you like cross-stitch things, but you also like books and, whatever else you can find on Amazon, which is pretty much everything, that's a fun way to do it, because they allow you to add things from everywhere. So with so much of the same color, which is true of other ones, not just on 40 count, I like to go all the way down the row and all the way back down the second row in one fell swoop, and then I highlight, because my highlighter is pretty much the width of 2 rows, and it kind of helps my brain to it's completed now. Those 2 rows, like I was saying, normally you'd go down and back for a row of cross stitches, but in half stitch, when you go down and back, it's 2 rows. So it just has a sense of completion and makes it nice for marking as well. So what I like to do on these, especially when it's so much solid color, just to keep track of where I'm at, to keep my counting in check, I like to do that, where I go down and back and highlight, down and back and highlight. And I have found, I've mentioned this in my update videos too, with half stitches, you can see column lines a tiny bit here, here, and here, where I have solid color. In the confetti, there's really, you don't need to worry about column lines, but in solid color areas, you can see it a little bit. If you, in certain lights and in certain angles, you don't see it as much. But right here, you can see a harder line of a column. And that's where I was trying to feather. Sometimes on full coverage pieces, you'll see people going in, like zigzagging out and in and out and in on their edges because they're feathering with full crosses. And that works great for full crosses, but for half stitches, this is what happens. Because I think the half, because you're on the half already, like the diagonal, the stitches are diagonal. If you try to have that diagonal in your, on the edge, it'll make, it's just the way the thread pulls. I don't know, I noticed it when I tried to stitch diagonally with half stitches too, that it just leaves that little ridge there. So I have found that I am comfortable with this level of column lines because they're very faint, and when it's stretched and washed, I think it'll be hardly noticeable. This one I'm leaving just because I'm not going to frog 40 count 1/1, but just an FYI, like, so that's why I'm not worried about this crisp line here, because it actually looks better than feathering. And if I had something nearby, like I could go all the way to there, but since there's like literally like 100 or more stitches horizontally of this one color before it stops and does something else, I don't want to lose my count. So I figured I'd go ahead and just stitch in columns, make sure, especially on 40 count, it's hard to count a long ways accurately because the threads are just so tiny. So this is kind of my way of making sure the count stays accurate and keeps me confident in what I'm doing. So I had hoped to maybe get this page finished for Year of Whips, but I think there's still a possibility I might. But this is my last day in February, and I'll have 5 days in April maybe for bird challenge or something in Full Coverage Fanatics. So because a lot of this is sky still, there's a possibility I might be able to get it done, this first page done by the end of that week in April, but there's also a possibility I won't, because there's this big chunk of a leaf right here that's got a lot of colors in it, so we'll see. I may, add a few days on in April if I feel like I'm really close to a finish, because that would be fun to have. I'm still, even though I've changed my rotation goals a little bit, it would still be fun to get a lot of the Year of Whips finishes that I had planned. I won't get all of them this way, but I'm going to go ahead and do this whole little chunk down here all at once rather than stop at the column. So, and this will probably be all I'll do. I may not even get to all of this because it does take a little while. There's a good amount of stitches in here. That one more. tiny, tiny needle. Actually, no, there's two more. Looking at the wrong line. There we go. Sorry if I have to pull it off frame a little bit, it's just so that I can see what I'm doing. Because it is really, really tiny. Looks like there's one over here too. There we go. All right, on my way back. This may be all I'll get to. I'm not sure. I'm maybe close to running out of storage on my camera based on previous weeks. So I'm just going to finish out this row and I'll just keep stitching until the camera turns off. How's that sound? Then I'll go get myself a cup of tea. But if you have any questions about half stitch stitching, I have other, at least one other stitch along video that talks about half stitch parking, which is the same exact method I'm doing here, but that one is on 28 count. When I was starting the flower garden, I did a little video, so you can go, I'll link that below